Thank you, Karen, very much, Karen.
Yes.
And your quality of attention is really special. We can feel it. Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to your childhood experience with nature, which you call push. The compelling luminous experience in the wood. I too had a direct experience with nature with the help of some psychedelics, mescaline. I thought that might help enliven the room a little bit. When I was 20, and everything changed for me after that. Could you share more particulars of your experience and those of other poets like Wordsworth and others you mentioned in your book about that direct experience?
Wordsworth does it very well, and I gave it that thought, the still sad music of humanity. Nor harsh nor grating, of ample power, a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something, just something. It can be the least thing, but it has its life. It has its own integrity. Even a fly, that Uncle Toby's fly, has its own integrity, or that wasp that the Buddhists rescued from the wine glass. And we need to make ourselves aware of the integrity of living things around us. We have just been treating them too long as objects, as things that we can use and change, and we've done great things, and with medicine and all this is wonderful, but we have also been careless with not seeing each thing as precious, like those flowers. Each of them is unique, and we take them for granted too much, and make ourselves look at the birds who are just hopping around. And when you're doing that 10-minute sit in the garden, notice the busyness of these birds. Their constant activity, their focus on living things and nature and eating things and feeding its young, and that life. But because we just need to waken ourselves up to that. And what was the question again?
Any more particulars about the push experience?
Push. I was only little and I didn't have language properly, but it was a strange kind of luminousness. And I lived in the countryside. I lived in Worcestershire. In England, which right rather out in the country, and with lovely, beautiful woods around where we used to go, and it was just a strange luminosity there in the woods, and words. I recognise it when Wordsworth says, that he could see this thing, something similar to. There was when meadow grow. When the world and every common sight to me did seem apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the fragrance of a dream. It is not now as it had been of yore. It's gone. As it goes with adulthood. It goes with the way we're educated at school and into the rational world. But I remember being sort of immensely worried about animals and things, immensely worried about what animals and butterflies, just what would happen to them. And but that all goes. We just tend to see these things as side sort of parts of decorations in our lives, perhaps a nuisance to us if they're buzzing around, or and we don't see them as a special. And I think as a child, everything is so new. We haven't got preconceived ideas of what things are. We haven't got concepts to put on things yet. We haven't got language much. And that so many things are new, and feelings that we have which we can't possibly describe. But that, I think, you see, you probably are more aware and open to nature then. And then, of course, it all gets drummed out of you at school, where you are made to go form a sort of a rational view of the world. But I remember being very, very sort of annoyed with my parents as they kept producing, oh, here's Dolly then, you know, for you. This is what you're looking for. And I said, no, it's Pooch, you know, you fool. Because there it was. And they couldn't see it. And soon I wouldn't see it either. It's certainly gone. But children, I think, watch them. They probably see things that are seeing life in an entirely different way.
In your book, you say we need good myths to help change our whole belief system. What would that look like?
Well, a myth has become very downgraded in our language, hasn't it? When we say, that's a myth, it means it didn't happen. But in the ancient world, a myth is something that in some sense happened once, but which also happens all the time. In some sense happens once, but also happens all the time. It has a sort of universal capacity, and we sort of look out for it. What was the question again?
What would good myths look like? I mean, we need to change our whole belief system and scale up in a way.
Yes.
For massive change. What kind of a massive myth would work?
I don't think we're going to start making up myths, frankly. I don't think that will be helpful, and I don't think we'll be able to do it. We're too rational. But I think we've got to start looking at nature in a different way. I think perhaps to start noticing the specialness of something. Just the specialness of, say, that wasp, its busyness, its the beauty of a flower, the extraordinary nature, the fact every morning the sun rises, and every evening it sets, and very beautiful it is. We don't notice these things anymore. And I was mentioning at lunch or somewhere earlier about how the Egyptians would follow the course of the sun because they found it so miraculous that every day the sun rose. And they had a whole scenario, the priests, whereby they followed it imaginatively throughout the day. Because in Egypt, of course, it's cloudless, and you see the sun literally going up into the heaven and then down at night. So they thought out a whole scenario of it. Then at night it went into the ground and died, and it's killed. It dies as the darkness comes, and then it's revived by the dawn in the morning, who revives the sun, and then it starts rising again, and that sense of following the sun, not taking it for granted, seeing it as miraculous that we are living in a universe which is so impeccably astonishing, that has enabled life to thrive against all odds on this extraordinary little planet of ours. And we no longer wonder at it. What the Egyptians were doing was sort of, by these myths, eliciting within themselves a sense of wonder and gratitude, and a sense of unity with nature, which we don't have. Now, I'm not suggesting that we sort of start creating Egyptian-style myths, but just start noticing these things. Noticing that it is marvelous that the sun rises every day. And of course, for the Egyptians too, when every year the Nile flooded and soaked all their fields, inundated off, and this enabled them to build their economy because agriculture was possible in this otherwise very desolate, arid region. And this was seen. There was a whole stories about how this arose, and the myths helped. They tell a story, but they're pointing to something that is wonderful, and we're losing that sense of wonder. And I think it's no good, as I say, us making up myths, but I think poetry can help us. I love poetry. And I studied it at Oxford and all that, and I love it. Not everybody likes poetry, though. I know. When I was as a teacher telling out would come your poetry books, and there'd be a groan from the class. but try and find something to make us marvel at the fact that we are living in this extraordinary universe which has enabled life that works every day and that which we are destroying carelessly.
Your book points out that most faiths emphasize nature, but the Bible doesn't focus on it.
No.
What is your advice to Christian leaders for better cultivating a relationship with nature in light of this?
You see, I didn't mention this in my talk, but the monotheisms took on a different view. Instead of seeing the divine in the forces of nature, they saw it in the events of history, in the Exodus from Egypt, for example, or in the life of Jesus Christ. And that has value too. I mean, don't knock it. They're very important lessons that we can learn from looking at the importance of human events and the sacredness of human events. But that was not cut. Islam is different. The Quran, I've said this earlier to some of you in the green room, I think. The Quran sees nature as a revelation that is equal to the Quran itself, a revelation of the divine that is equal. And there are extraordinary passages in praise of nature, which is astonishing when this scripture was composed in Saudi Arabia, what is now Saudi Arabia, with this hideous climate. Hideous climate. And the Arabs, before the coming of Islam, had no time for nature at all. They were half starved. There just wasn't enough food they could grow for everybody, so they had to fight each other to live. They were all suffering from extreme malnutrition. But here is the Quran, where extolling the wonderful, just like the Egyptians, the fact that the wonderful regularity of nature, that the sun rises, that the moon rises, whereas in our scriptures, we focus on miracles, disturbances of nature, things that are unnatural, people suddenly walking out of tombs or that kind of thing. And
Some water.
yes, thanks. So we developed a different. Now it's important because we do need to look at history deeply, as the monotheisms do. We do need to learn lessons from history, and perhaps even see the divine there. But it does mean we need to sort of focus more on the natural, on the things of nature, and also with the Quran, just don't think that just because you've got a copy of the Quran and you read it and you find it rather boring, it's not meant to be read. It's meant to be listened to. Quran means recitation, and it's a great art form. It's sung and chanted. It's a great art to be able to do that. And it wasn't ever read in the way that we would read prose or read our Bibles, for example. You listen to it, And like all great music or song, it speaks to one at a very, very profound level.
This really wasn't in your book, but I'm asking you about grief, climate grief, eco-anxiety over immeasurable loss. What might religious practices teach us about healthy grief resolution and to get us motivated to act?
Well, when we feel grief or feel feared, I think we should start be feeling rather frightened now. We've seen the way the climate has changed. Even this last year, we had some really alarming weather. Grief, anxiety, and also a sense of sorrow, I think, that what we've done. We've been careless, like the mariner just shooting the albatross, just off, not giving it a second thought. And we do that kind of thing every day. And we've become heedless. Whereas in the ancient religions, you spent a lot of time and energy revering nature and cultivating that sense of it. We've just basically treated it as a resource and not noticed. Now we should start feeling real grief, I think, and start looking at the pathos of what's happening to people around the world who are already suffering very severely because of what we've all been doing. There should be sorrow, and we shouldn't just push it to the back of our minds, I think. We've got to be aware of what we're doing, aware of the preciousness and our utter dependence upon nature, what the next generation will have to deal with because of our carelessness. And not that we sort of are paralyzed with grief and depression, because that just makes us sink into a torpor where we can do nothing. But not... I was sitting with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and she lives near Heathrow. And it has been rather blissful for her during the pandemic, when, of course, there weren't... But sitting in this garden, she's got a lovely garden, and these huge planes, every minute, roaring over our heads. And where are we all going? I mean, I felt really guilty getting on the plane coming here. Is it really necessary? And the way we immediately, after the end of the pandemic, rushed to the airports to go on holiday, then we don't seem to be able to understand, like killing the albatross, what it is we're actually doing. Perhaps we should ration ourselves to say two flights a year or something. Just as, we rationed ourselves during the war, World War II. And start realizing that if we want the next generation not to suffer a hideous indignity and pain and terror, we must stop behaving so carelessly, like shooting albatrosses all the time.
So we always have fun with this afterlife question, and I have a different angle for you this time.
Okay.
One of our past speakers and one of my heroes, the late Edward O. Wilson, the acclaimed biologist, two-time Pulitzer winner, established the science of biodiversity. But he was basically an atheist, and he didn't expect a personal afterlife. He described his idea of human eternity in one of his last books called Half the Earth, saying you're part of diversity you're part of eternity if you help diversity. And if you invest in nature, you'll go on in nature.
That's beautiful. Yes. I like it.
You like it?
Yes, I do. I mean, I rather like this gentleman. I don't believe that there's a heaven or a God.
No, he didn't. He was not expecting that. He thought it would be boring.
Yes, I did as a child, I remember. I remember saying, I don't think I want to go to heaven, because I had been told that we'd be singing Glory Be to God all day long. I thought, no, I mean, this sounds far too tedious. So I have no belief in a personal God now. No, none at all. And because the more I read about the sacredness, as I tried to describe in other faiths, that sees the divine as ubiquitous, as everywhere, as a force that pulses through, but not as a being. I can't do that now. I really can't. And I don't believe in heaven. And I haven't really thought where I shall probably be, fertilize the earth or something. But I think, I've had a very lucky life. I've had a difficult time sometimes, but I've had a very fortunate life. I've kept my health, and I'm now quite old, and I'm still pretty healthy. And this is something to be thankful for. And if I've done something to help the world, then I'd be very happy. That's a great privilege. So no, I'm not looking forward to dying or getting ill or anything of that sort, but I'm not expecting to fly up to the Imperium or something. I don't think that they'll be all waiting for me at the Golden Gates. I think that I will disappear and become part, if we have an Earth, be part of that.
This is a fun question. Your books take us to remote pasts and places like ancient Egypt, the actual age of rational Greece, Confucian China, European beginnings of science. Where do you think you'd be comfortable? Where would you fit if you had a choice? Where would you like to be?
I don't know. You see, I would be a woman still, wouldn't I? And there wouldn't be much hope for me there. So I think I think I'm very lucky to be a woman today, in this climate, in this country, and in my own country, and to have had the education and the chances that I've had, which my own mother never had, let alone previous generations, and so that. I can't see myself fitting into these other, because I'd be one of those. I wouldn't have been a very successful wife, I don't think, and I have absolutely no use of things like cooking and needlework and things. I was the despair of my fellow nuns in the convent because of my bad cooking, and my sewing was atrocious, and we did nothing but sew all day long when I was at. So all those female things, which I would be having to do, I can't see myself doing them really. So I think I can't see myself going back to any of those times.
Thank God for the present.
Yes, thank God for the present. And I'm glad I'm a woman, but I'm also glad that I'm a woman today, and in a world that allows me to be free and to have been educated and to have the privileges that I've had.
This is my last question. What are your hopes for sacred nature and its reception?
I never allow myself to hope.
Hope?
Hope, no.
You don't allow yourself to hope?
No, I'm a real pessimist. Because I think once you start putting worry, you just write the book, and I enjoy writing the book, and I am utterly involved, and I do it the best I possibly can. But then it goes out into the world, and sometimes it's lovely, and everyone says wonderful things, but not always. And but if you're just doing it because you're going to get mentioned in the New York Times or something, that's not enough. I enjoy writing and researching so much that that's a privilege in itself to do it. But I don't let myself think about the book and how it's going to go, because some people get really wrought up about ringing up the publishers every week to see how many people have sold and how it's selling there, and I leave that to my agents, and they rope it all in and just go on working. I don't want to become one of those people that are, and I've been very lucky. Fortunately, I've been able to make a living out of it. And at one point, when I was had to leave teaching because of ill health and various other failures in my life, things looked rather grim, as I'd never married, and I didn't know quite what would happen to me. And so I've been very fortunate and very glad that my books have enabled me to live in a comfortable, privileged way. But I just send them out, and you do your best, and then it's out of your hands, really. And some people spend hours rushing to the newspapers to see whether there's a review in it. I don't even like reading reviews, and you can become too sort of obsessed with that. Whereas the point is writing, not how, and if people like it, fine. But a lot of people, as I say, I do very badly in England, my own country. They don't like religion, and they continually say, "Oh God, cars," said my friend, "when are you going to write something interesting for a change?" so I get sort of really pushed in my place, really, and then none of them read them. I hand them out sometimes. They, "Oh, thank you very much," and it goes in the shelf, and that's the end of it. But for me, it is. Writing is hard, very hard. But what is lovely is the research, the reading, and the finding out of things, and that's what I really enjoy.
Karen will sign books at the end. We don't have got a time problem here, and this really has been a special audience. There's been a really meditative quality about your attention, and we can feel it. It's really special.
Yes.
Thank you for being a part of this. And Karen, this is your third clock I'm going to give you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for a beautiful evening.
Thank you very much.